Hi guys, James here, thanks for coming to watch. And in this week's Finding My Tone, I thought I would do something a little bit different. So let me just explain. If you haven't seen the last two episodes, I've been trying to find my always on pedal, which I think is a really important part of discovering what your tone is and what your preferences are, and going forward in creating your own unique sound, so you sound like yourself. I've been trying out various pedals. I've been through about 5 different overdrive sorted pedals and a fuzz pedal. And that series is going to continue in the coming weeks, and then we're going to move on to the rest of the board. But this week I thought we'd take a slight diversion because I came across a tone this last week when I was playing around that is really sort of appealed to me. And I just wanted to explain, because normally on this channel I play a lot of sort of blues music, sort of older style. I like very dry sounds, a little bit of reverb, but really going for that biting edge of overdrive tone. And that's the sort of tone I've been trying to find. And that does cover half of what I do. I love to sit around and just play like that. The other half of me really likes sort of ambient, mellow guitar music. And that's the sort of stuff I'm actually going to be starting to record soon. For what purpose, I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure if it will go anywhere, but that's what I'm interested in. If you saw my Bloomfield Drive review that came out recently, yesterday or the day before, you'll have the bits I were playing. That's the sort of stuff I'm talking about. So if you haven't, if you don't know what I'm talking about, and you could go and watch that, but I'll be playing in a second. So I wanted to just take you through what I thought would be an interesting process for everyone, which is how to sort of link a few pedals together to create that sort of tone. It's completely different from what I normally do. I mean, I was sitting around half an hour ago playing my 50s standard gold top with P90s with my hand-wired little Fender Custom Princeton, and that is a sound I absolutely love just by itself. I just stuck on my my current always on favourite. I won't tell you what it is, and just played around with that, and that's what I like to do. But this other side of my music is also something I love, and it's something I'm going to be exploring a lot more of. So excuse me if I'm bending over here and there. I decided after the epic, for me, epic editing process of making my Bloomfield Drive video that today I'm going to make this really simple and basically a bit old school in the fact that I'm just really going to play to you as I go along rather than doing lots of pre-recorded clips today, because that last video took me quite a while and I just basically need to get this video out without too much effort. Right, here we go. So for this piece, I knew that I wanted to play with the classic Reverb signature. I love the sweetness of that amp, and the Bloomfield Drive can do a very sweet, clean sound, but the classic Reverb signature probably has a slightly more personality to it. It's got more shape in its tone, if that makes any sense. One day soon, in the next month or so, I'll definitely be doing a comparison video with the Bloomfield and the classic Reverb, so we'll get to all of that. But basically, I started with this tone, and I will put up a little clip of what's on the amp right now. And the piece just starts simply in C. And goes up here to D. And then the piece carries on to sort of... So you can see it's got that sort of mellow ambient vibe that I'm going for, So here was what my process was when I was thinking about this. First of all, I needed to beef up this tone a little bit. I didn't want to just turn up the amp because, when you're recording, you don't always just want to push your mic preamps down too far or up too far. I wanted a nice, good volume that I could work with in this room, not create too much reverberation. I use room mics as well as amp mics. Having said that, I need to just turn this mic a little bit. There we go. And using room mics is quite difficult, especially in a room that you're not in control of the acoustics. So I don't want to play too loud and cause huge reverberation. So my next step was to find which pedal would go next in the sequence in this chain. And I went for a couple of choices. I tried the, what's it called? Sorry, Revival Trem, which is one of my favorite ever pedals. but there was a bit too much brown face, bit too much creaminess going on there, and I didn't want to colour the tone that much. And I tried the Dualist, but again, that's got that real Stevie Ray Vaughan tube screamer sound. Then someone pointed out to me last week about Klon pedals, and I've only really toyed around with the Klon. I had the Mjolnir pedal, but that's gone in for repair, it stopped working. And someone recommended this RYRA clone, and I got this last week, plugged it in, and this honestly inspired me so much. So if I just play without for a second. And then I plug it, turn it on. And the pedal just absolutely inspired me. So again, just to show you without, with, and it does this really great thing. It pushes the mid slightly, I find, and I've got the sort of gain knob on it just at around 10 o'clock, and the volume about 11, the output, the treble at about 1 o'clock. And it's just giving that edge. This pedal can go pretty beefy. It can go right up there. But for this purpose, it just gives me that. It's so organic. I didn't want it to sound like I've got an overdrive pedal on. I didn't want to use like the Noble's ODR one, which I'm giving away in a competition at the moment. If you haven't seen that video, go back a couple of videos and find that one. You just need to subscribe to the channel and then comment on a video, and I'll put you in for the competition, which I'm going to give away that pedal anywhere in the world when I hit 1,500 subs. Anyway, enough of that plug. You know, that pedal sounds like an overdrive, which is great for lots of situations like blues rock, hard rock, and all of those things, and I love it. But for this, where I don't want it to really sound like I've got anything on, this RYRA clone is just at those moments when you dig in with your thumb or your pick, it just gives you that slight overdrive edge, which is what I'm looking for. So then to create ambience, you know, what is the next step? And I played around a lot with the reverb on the amp. And I mean, I can make the reverb on here go pretty mental, hopefully. Can you hear that? And it sounds really good, but I didn't want to muddy the tone too much. So I just pull it back so it's sort of around half on the send and return in this amp. And then what I've got is the STRYMON Volante, which is the most complex pedal that I own. I was actually intending on doing a video where I discussed, is it worth having complex pedals? And I'm going to use the STRYMON Volante, and I'm going to use this absolutely crazy pedal, the Revival Drive, both of which have so many options. It can be really hard sometimes when you just want to get going. But I turned on the Strymon, and I finally decided to spend 10 minutes playing around with it. I've had the thing for about 6 months, and it intimidated me, frankly, so I never really got on with it. But I decided to finally play with it. I'm just going to tell you briefly what the settings are. Excuse me, as I said, this is a bit of a lo-fi video, so I'm, you know, just sort of winging it today. But I put it in the tape type of echo, and then I've got a bit of mechanical and wear. How shall I put it? You know, with that tape stuff, with the old analog real tape delay machines, you know, things would wear over time and the mechanics would not be perfect. So you get these little sort of ghost notes and things like that happen. The pitch can shift slightly as the tape is basically just wearing and not playing properly, and all those sorts of things. So I've included a bit of that for that really organic sound. And then I've set the pedal, so I will put a clip of it so you can see. But basically, we're going for repeats with a triplet timing to them. And I haven't got any spring reverb. You can put spring reverb here. I didn't want to muddy with that. And then you can set the level of the recorded delay. So you could either have it so you can really hear the delay tails or not. And I've set it so it's not very high, because if you set it really high, you you can just hear it's trailing quietly. If I was to turn that level up, you know, it can get in the way. So it's really only on number 9. Even that's a bit loud. It's normally on about 8. That's it. So I don't want it to muddy the tone as I go along. So again, just to show you if it's off. And then with it on. So I really don't want it to sound overly processed, which is why I'm going for quite minimal sort of settings. I don't want huge 80s overtones and crazy long delay tails or anything that's too chaotic. It's really got to be calm. But what is missing from this is my favorite effect, and I've talked about this before, tremolo. Now, 2-Rock, these heads obviously don't have tremolo. My other amps, I try and get tremolo amps. I've got my Sewer Ombre, my Tone King, Sky King, I've got a Vox AC15, and then I've got a Vibrolux, so Fender Custom 68 Vibrolux, and the Fender Custom 64 Princeton, all of which have tremolo. So really it's just the 2-Rocks that don't. Now, my Revival Trem pedal could, of course, do the tremolo for me, but there's no way of just running the tremolo clean from that pedal. And as I said, even if you set it to minimal, there's a colouring of the tone that for this, I didn't want it to be that, to have that much of an identity in itself, the overdrive part of the sound. So what I did instead was I got the Fender Tube Tremolo. It is a Fender pedal, which it's my first Fender pedal. Reasonably priced, 100 and something pounds, and for that you get proper tube type tremolo like you do in the Revival Trem, and you get lots of settings to play with. I will be doing little review videos of the Strymon Volante and the tube tremolo just because why not? I think it would be interesting to see what capability these pedals have, as well as the RYRA clone. That's going to get its own video. So let's hear it again without the tremolo. So it's starting to fill up the space and the sound, and it's got ambience to it, but not a huge amount. So now if I kick in the tremolo, I could probably turn down the intensity a little bit. Like with a real amp, and like with the Revival Trem, when you attack, probably too little intensity now. There we go. you start to attack, it just lessens the effect slightly, which is great. It allows your tone to come through a little bit more. But when you slow down, now you could go wild with that tremolo. Let's see what that's like. But if you do that, sometimes it just starts to get lost. So best to be a bit sensible with it. Now, before we get onto the last pedal that creates this tone, let's just work backwards and see what it really sounds like. We'll keep the tremolo on because ultimately that is the main ambient effect that I want. So if I didn't have the volante on, it's lost a lot of that air and that space and the way it lingers, which with the volante on. Actually allows you to play with a lot of dynamics because the notes linger in the air, and so it gives you a bit of space to breathe and a bit of space to go slowly. So if we were to turn off the RYRA, so with off, with, sorry, that was without. And I was then incredibly happy with that tone. It really inspired me, and it actually led me to sort of creating that bit more of that piece. You know, I got the beginnings of it, and it just led me on, and I sort of sat there for hours playing, and ended up with what I got, which obviously I'm not playing the full piece. I'll wait till I've recorded it. So, but there was one more pedal, and the reason for that was as I started to do some rehearsal recording, sort of practice recording, it's very difficult unless you're an incredibly experienced player to rein in all of the duff notes, to rein in the excess of dynamics when you get a bit excited and you overhit it. And when you're playing live or you're playing to someone, those things become part of the emotion. But when you're recording it and people can't see you and people aren't in the room with you, those things can just sound out of balance, out of level. And if you've ever wondered why the record you hear is quite different from what you hear if you see a band play live, it's because, you know, the record is manufactured in that sense to give it that, you're basically stamping down a perfect example of what you're playing. It means that when you're playing live, often you get a lot more feeling and intensity out of a piece because there's a human there making those split-second decisions. But when you're recording, you don't necessarily want all of those huge differences in dynamics. So that led me to the next pedal, which is a compressor pedal. Now, a compressor pedal is basically a get-out-of-jail-free card as far as I can see. It squishes things down a little bit, reduces the dynamics slightly, but it can actually really enable you to play with a bit more finesse overall. Now, I've got another Origin Effects pedal. Basically, I think this is what started off Origin Effects. It's a British firm. And the guy was asked to create some studio compressor gear and recreate a famous one, which I can't remember the name of right now, but it has the number 76 in it. Hence the name of this pedal, CALI76. And he managed to shrink it down into these pedals. There are 3 or 4 different versions of this. I only got the CALI76 because it was the only one available in stock at the time I bought it. But I knew that I'd be happy with any of them. I'm not a compressor connoisseur, let's put it that way. So let's play again without. maybe you can't tell, but if I'm playing that without the pedal now, there's a bit more sort of a jagged edge. There's a bit more of a difference in each stroke, which is fine if you're playing live, and I would enjoy that. So I might not necessarily always use the compressor then, but in the studio, just removing some of the dry signal from the pedal. So essentially you can blend in how much of the compressor you want to use. So I believe it works. So it's really compressed there, and I think less compressed. So for the sake of this and this and sort of demonstrating it, I've got it reasonably compressed. Just want to make sure it's got enough life left in the tone, so I'm just reducing the compression a bit. So there you go. I thought that could be an interesting thing to show you, how I've worked through these pedals to get the sound that I want. I'm going to tweak it a little bit more when I record. I actually had it set up so perfectly the other day, and a couple of times when I picked up the pedals, my stupid big fingers have sort of moved stuff around a bit by accident. I've tried to dial it back in, but it can be so sensitive, and obviously with something like a 2-rock, which is so able to show everything about your tone, you know, you have to be really careful if you want to get an exact sound. I could dial the reverb back a little bit in the amp. I could dial the delay out a little bit, but I'm liking the way that all the sounds come together. Each part is completely intrinsic and important to this tone, from the RYRA through to the compressor, and without it I wouldn't be able to get the sound that I've been after for this particular thing. So yeah, in terms of finding my tone for this particular side of my playing, this ambient side, this is definitely a platform that I want to build on. I probably just need a couple more pedals in here to give me a little bit more sort of variety, I guess. But for now, this is the sound that I want to use to try out with the other guitars I've got and all those things. So anyway, I hope you found that interesting. Next week, we'll be back to choosing my always-on pedal for my more blues-oriented playing. Back to my ES355 for that, and maybe the Gibson. I feel like when I'm playing the blues stuff, I really enjoy playing with those guitars a lot. It gives me that real vintage inspired tone that I love. So anyway, as I said, I hope this has been interesting. Please subscribe to the channel if you want to carry on watching this series. Hit the notification bell so you know when the next video is out, and give this video a thumbs up. And in the comments, let me know what other pedals might be good for this ambient sound. What do you think of what I've done here? What would you do differently? Cheers.